Okay, so just real quickly, a couple important dates. Our next workshop is the Tuesday after break. Kerry Slade will be talking about business, social impact structure and models. On January 12th, we're going to have an alumni panel, well, a Changemaker Challenge alumni panel of how I won the Changemaker Challenge. That's always exciting. On the 17th, you have the opportunity to get expert mentoring on your idea or on your submission. Submissions are due the evening of the 19th, and then our big summit, which leads off with the Changemaker Challenge and will then be followed by a very prominent speaker, is on February 24th. Real quickly, if you want information on how to create good social impact, how to enter the Changemaker Challenge, please scan this code. And I strongly urge you, if you care about anything going on in this world, including the planet or outer space or anything else, please register and submit. It's a relatively straightforward form, similar to the idea competition. Anyone who has been in any of the lean startup classes or creativity and innovation or social entrepreneurship or anything where they really just focus or are doing a lot of thinking about social issues, it's easy to enter. You have great resources available and it's very worthwhile. Okay, so at this point, I would like to introduce our second speaker, who is Rebecca Collins, Director of Sustainability at the Office of Sustainability here at Temple University. She's a key partner in all of our social impact activities and a woman with, and she'll tell you, very diverse experience in all different sectors and a real powerhouse on campus. We're going to be led off by Mr. Wayne Williams, also a long-term partner of social impact. In the first ever Changemaker Challenge we had, I think 5 years ago, Wayne was a judge. He's now part of our planning committee. He's extremely involved in the city, in helping students, and again, is a great person to get to know. He's assistant professor of accounting here at Fox, in addition to many other things. And at this point, Wayne, I turn it over to you.
Excellent. Thank you. And welcome, everybody. So again, my name is Wayne Williams, and tonight I'm just going to talk about, one of everybody's favorite subjects, which is accounting, right? So everybody gets super hyped and excited when you start talking about accounting, just because, people love accounting. And so I kind of want to, make sure that I walk you through how accounting can play a role in developing your social impact business and why it's important. So I think I'm sharing now, right, Alan? Am I sharing correctly? All right.
Yeah.
All right. So let me see. I'm going to catch up in the slide deck. Give me 1 second. So the first thing I really want to talk about is kind of just 3 things to think about accounting. And so financial sustainability is my part before, Director Collins comes on. Literally, I want you to think about, as you're doing innovation, how do you make it financially sustainable? And so not just a great idea, but one that can have legs and then can have continuum. So businesses are not static and they need to be extremely flexible. And what accounting does is it provides some data to business managers to help them understand where they are in the process and can inform kind of how they make decisions. So 3 thoughts about accounting. It's a management tool. Once you start a business and you've begin the process of becoming an entrepreneur, then you're going to want to measure what the health, the financial health of that company is. And so what accounting does for a company is, 1, it helps you keep track of your income. It helps you understand where your spending is actually going. It also provides you with financial reports. Now, this becomes extremely important for a number of different things. Once you kind of get your business going, and in many cases, as you're in the formation of that business, you're going to have to do some fundraising. So fundraising basically comes in, essentially three different ways that you can fundraise. One is all of the money, the startup capital that you use is your own money. But a lot of business owners will start up a business and have to go out and seek financing through other equity ownership, which is venture capital, and or they will need to borrow money. And one of the things that will happen when you do that is they're going to ask you, what financial statements do you have? So early stage businesses do not have financial statements. And so in the beginning, you're starting to kind of form them through the activity that you have. Now, when you are doing your business before it starts up, you're doing something called financial forecasting. And this is kind of estimating what you anticipate will be the financial activity of your company. So it looks at income minus your expenses, determines whether or not your business is a profitable or viable idea. The other one is kind of what's called a balance sheet, and that shows not what you're making in terms of income, but what is the net worth of that business. So it lists what assets you have in the business, what debt you may have in that business through liability, and then where the owner equity is. These financial statements are important for anybody when you're doing a pitch and they're actually looking to either fund that business or support that idea. So thinking about accounting early on is extremely important for all of you. And so you don't have to be an expert in accounting, but you need to seek out the help of an accountant. So that is my key takeaway for my presentation. You do not need to know all of the accounting, but having an accountant is critical for the growth of your business. So make sure that you reach out for accounting. Here at Temple, we do have the Small Business Development Center, and Temple SBDC actually helps small businesses to do the financial forecasting. So it's a great tool. It's free to you. It's here as part of Temple University. And so I would encourage you to go to the Temple SBDC. So funding is one part of it. The other one is tax. And so, oh my goodness, taxes. People have a lot of opinions about tax, but tax is all about rules. And so many of the rules are unknown to business owners when they start a business. So one of the things that you should get some advisement about is taxation. And so you pay taxes, basically everybody, at three different levels. It's at the federal level, it's at the state level, and it is at the local county level, wherever your business is located. Again, key takeaway, you don't need to know all of these rules. What is important, and what I see is successful business owners are the ones that get support for both legal questions and accounting questions early in the process to help them become a viable business. Otherwise, you'll seek out help when you run into problems, and problems can be costly. So to reduce your costs, you want to employ the help of a professional. We're here to help you. So I just want to talk about what is financial sustainability. And so you want to really think about where's the money going to come from, right? So when you're thinking through the product or service that you are developing, you kind of want to think about, well, who's going to pay for this? And most people think in the idea that it's going to be the customer. But if you are trying to target something in social impact, you may find that your customer really doesn't have all of the necessary resources to pay the cost or the price of what it is that you are providing to them. And so if they don't have the ability to pay for that, then is there some other mechanism that you could actually access that would subsidize? Subsidize means it is putting in the funding where the customer does not provide all of the payment, where the subsidy is coming from government And government is one form, through maybe grants, through programs that are emerging. As Alan said, there are a lot of different things that are happening within the city around tax policy to help small businesses kind of launch their business. And so you want to make sure that you're thinking about, are there any government resources or programs that are applicable to your business idea? Because social impact should be a part of good government policy. The third one is reimbursement. And the reason I put that in there is because actually healthcare is one of the biggest areas of social impact, that a lot of, social entrepreneurs kind of think about. How do we solve different things around health insurance? And health insurance, most of the time, the person who's receiving that care is not actually paying for it. So this is called a reimbursement model. And under the reimbursement model, what happens is if you're able to provide a service that is reimbursed by insurance, then instead of you billing the customer, you are actually billing that insurance company, which provides the revenue to you in terms of your business or your service. And so I just want to make sure that you think about this as you're thinking about your model, like, how can I charge a customer? How can I monetize this business? Are there government programs that exist? Are there reimbursements? And what I know from being a judge, and Alan will, confirm this, is people will be listening to see whether or not you've done your research to determine whether or not there are existing programs that are there and that are viable. So before I move to the next slide, I want to just take a quick pause and see, is there anybody who has a question so far?
Wayne, can I just ask a quick, can you give some examples other than medical or healthcare that might be reimbursable in the social impact area?
Oh, 100%. So there are many different ways in which you can actually get reimbursement. So I'm going to say that healthcare is probably the most one that focuses on social impact, but other types of insurance that you will see. I actually have a small business that I've done some advising for, which they do repair cars. And so when you get into an automobile accident, you don't have the funds in order to keep that car on the road in order for you to get back and forth to jobs, take care of your family. And so this is another one of those businesses that relies heavily upon a reimbursement model, as a way to kind of fund the business. All right, sounds good. Thank you for the question, Alan. So I often find that social impact businesses are actually, they'll say, I'm going to start a nonprofit. And so what I want to just do is tell you what that means in accounting when you say nonprofit. So Temple University, University of Pennsylvania, Drexel University, all of these are nonprofits, and you could see how big they are, right? And so what's interesting is when I was an accounting student here at Temple myself, I remember the controller for Temple was one of my instructors in accounting. And he said the day that Temple does not generate a profit is the day that Temple no longer exists. So the term nonprofit often means that when you're thinking about the entity, you're thinking of it as if you're not supposed to generate a profit. But in tax parlance, what it means is that if you do, or when you do generate a profit, guess what? You don't have to pay federal income tax. So most nonprofit entities actually have money that is left over at the end of the year because they need that capital to roll over from year to year. So they're not thinking like, oh, I just get all the money that I get is the money that I spend. They are doing good financial stewardship and creating profitability as they go along. So in that sense, I want you to think of not-for-profit as meaning tax exempt. And so you could see the definition of 501c3 is actually Internal Revenue Code 501 paragraph C, statutory line number 3. And what it means is it's an organization that is organized and operated exclusively if you have a religious purpose, a charitable purpose, scientific purpose, if you're testing for public safety, if it's literary, if it's educational, those are different ways in which you could actually qualify your business idea for tax exemption. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about, I'm starting this social impact business. You could, in fact, be organized as a 501c3. Another question that people often have, can you have one part of it be nonprofit and another part of it be for profit? And the answer is yes. And so you will see that some entities have both nonprofit and for-profit components to them. And I will go back to the same example. Here I am on Temple's campus. And if you were to go around on Temple's campus, there is parts of Temple that Temple is leasing out the building to a different business in that building, right? So if you locate on Temple's campus and you are operating a restaurant, that restaurant is paying rent to Temple. That is not Temple's primary mission. So Temple pays taxes on that unrelated business income from renting out some of the space that it has to other entities. So Temple, in that sense, has both nonprofit elements and for-profit elements as an entity. So keep that in mind as you're thinking about your business idea. So one of the things that happens with nonprofits is they don't rely upon all of their funding to come from just donations. So I don't want you to think about it through that idea either. So there's something called fee for service. And that means that you are actually charging, in the sense that there is a government program, you could actually charge the government for providing the service that you have. And you'll also see that there are private partnerships, right? So public-private also works well in terms of there are corporations that are providing funding for a not-for-profit entity. So you will see once you access a lot of not-for-profits, they will have what you'll see are called sponsors. And these are corporations that they reach out to. And a lot of times corporations are offering the product or service, but they are supporting that product or service getting to underserved populations or those who are in the most vulnerable population. So fees could come from charging for-profit companies in order to deliver the components of the service or good that you are using in order to access some of the more underserved populations. You can also see that the third part is, private contributions. And at that point, you're probably a larger type of organization. But if you started a not-for-profit in Philadelphia, my suggestion would be to look at the Urban Affairs Coalition, which is kind of like a parent organization. And what it does is, if you are a nonprofit and you have not gotten your IRS certification to operate as a nonprofit, they will allow for you to use their nonprofit organization. So you'll see a lot of startup nonprofit organizations under the Urban Affairs Coalition. So for-profit firms are another type of entity. And so within tax, this is something that we talk about to, our accounting students to help them advise business owners, right? And so lots of business owners don't really know the difference between all of these different choices that you have. And some of them that you've heard of course, the most popular one is LLC. And so LLC stands for Limited Liability Corporation. And so it is a entity that is, company actually. And so the limited liability company is something that could actually be unincorporated, but it doesn't necessarily have tax benefits to it. It is very easy to start, and that's kind of why it's the most popular entity type. What it does provide is legal liability. So that limited liability is more from a legal perspective than it is from a limited liability from a tax perspective. So getting help with that is also of what entity choice is very important. So people don't realize it, and we don't judge you on this, but I want you to begin to think about the value of having someone who has accounting knowledge and getting advice from them. Other types of entities are partnerships, S corporations, which is a special classification that you make with the IRS, and C corporations. Each of them has their own unique tax, and excuse that spelling error, and accounting requirements. So thinking about which one of those is going to require you to get some assistance. So you don't have to figure that out as you're developing the business. And a lot of times you may move from one entity type to another. So as you think about your company, you're going to need to think about how are you going to competitively price your goods and services, as well as control your costs. And so if you start a for-profit entity, you got to think about how much are the costs to deliver that product or service, and then how are you going to make money in order to cover those costs. So just want you to think about the business model and the formation of your idea. So the 4 Ps. And so this is really something that came from Michael Porter at Harvard University. He basically, Professor Porter, he basically came with these 4 Ps, right? And the 4 Ps with pricing is the last of the 4 Ps. The 3 Ps is in the bottom right-hand corner, which is, what is your product? We want you to be able to speak very concisely about what is the product that you are, delivering to the customer. And then secondly is promotion. How are you going to promote that? What is the market? Where is your market? Who is your customer, in fact? And how would you inform the customer that you actually exist so that you can attract that customer to you? And then place. Where is the best place for you to actually place your product or service? Given the internet and given social media, I mean, place has expanded in terms of what geographic location actually means. But once you're able to actually do this, you're able to then come up with some idea of the costs. A lot of students will say, hey, I want to develop an app. And so I often will ask them, well, how much does an app writer cost? And so they'll say, I don't know. And so most app writers are somewhere between $75,000 and $150,000 to write the app for your idea. So just the idea of coming up with what the app could be, you're still going to need the technology to be built around how to make that app operable. So it's just a cost factor, and you want to think about that in the beginning, because when you're doing your pitch, we just want to know that you have thought about that. So on here, you want to understand what is happening in terms of the marketplace. How are you going to develop your brand in terms of, you're going to have a logo for your brand like we have IEI? And then, where's your competition? You are probably not going to be the only person that come up with that idea. So there are going to be others who are doing it, right? So what is unique and different and innovative about what it is that you come up with? That is how you differentiate yourself, right? And then you want to think about what are the needs of your customer, how you connect the brand of what you are providing to them. That connection is how you make the sale. And so quality, how do you know quality in terms of the delivery of the service? Now we know that customers are a lot more demanding in terms of customer service. So we can see that, if you are developing a great idea, but it's not done in a way that customers perceive has been done well, that can kind of hold against you. So thinking about the whole structure of the business model and the delivery model are two distinct kind of ideas that many of the judges will be looking for you to have in your pitch. And so, is it probable? Is the probability of your idea, like, is this something that you could really actually do? Is it realistic? I mean, is it just, more of a daydream? Daydreams turn into nightmares. So we want you to think of it in the idea that, I thought of it during the day, but I worked on it all night. And so now it's not a daydream. It's actually something that we can bring into reality. And then how will you position your product in the market? And so I know that when Rebecca comes next, she's really going to talk about innovation and how you can think through, how do you position it? How do you position your product or service? And how do you make sure that it has its own unique and distinct placement in the market? So all of these things are, very important. And of course, market conditions. Market conditions is thinking about where we are today. We know that because of the supply chain problems that we're having, that's a global problem, not a US problem, but it's real. There is a lot of inequality that is being, has emerged as a result of the pandemic. And so that there's a lot of opportunities that exist. People usually mistake problems with problems when we think of it as business owners as opportunities. So make sure that you're identifying the problem, but seeing that as the opportunity. The most successful entrepreneurs normally see a problem as an opportunity. So if you can kind of frame it in that way in your pitch, that's also going to resonate really well with the judges. So I'm going to make sure that you have this slide to think through the 4 Ps. Before you get to the price of how to get it, think about those cost drivers. So here's my example. So here's a shero, right? So, girl power, right? So here in Philadelphia, I think she's a real champion. Dr. Ayla Stanford started the Black Doctors Consortium right in the middle of the pandemic. Everything stopped except for her. Right? When everything stopped, she actually took that and saw not a problem, but an opportunity. She had a vision, right? So her thought was, as a physician, she had already been aware that there were some health access inequities for the Latinx and Black community in terms of healthcare. And then here comes the pandemic. And so I think the statistic says something like 3 times as likely for a person of color to contract COVID. So she took action. She created this consortium of Black doctors, and the Black doctors were all volunteers. So her payroll costs were 0 in the beginning, right? They all formed this idea. And then she went to a church and she started this testing out of a church. Now, here's what most people don't know about going to these centers. Why do you get the vaccine in the center and not at your doctor's office? So fascinating, I found out about it because I think about the business model. The government will actually pay an organization money to administer the vaccine, but if you do it at the doctor's office, the doctor will lose money. So doctors don't administer the vaccine. They support the vaccine, but they lose money if they actually give the shot in the office. So they refer you to the centers. And so imagine at the time that we had all of this vaccine being developed by for-profit companies, Moderna, which is traded on the stock market, Johnson and Johnson's traded on the stock market, and then Pfizer traded on the stock market. The government, again, going back to that question Alan asked about being reimbursed, the government purchased the vaccine. So we purchased the vaccine, all of us paid for it through taxes, and then it was delivered by people who could apply and become vaccination centers. And so Dr. Ayla Stanford was able to do this with the Black Doctors Consortium. She started out doing this as, kind of like something that would be administered to the community. She did not focus in on how she was going to make a lot of money at it. And guess what? She was then considered to be the health commissioner for Philadelphia. We did a great job in Pennsylvania with really messaging around COVID. I think we're here at Temple at University because of how we dealt with COVID in our state and in our city. So how about that? It's an amazing impact that really everybody kind of came together. The government in terms of the policies, of course, they were uncomfortable for all of us, but in turn, we're now able to come together and kind of learn together and move forward and think about how to create solutions to better lives and the quality of lives for each other. So today, guess what? She now has a Center for Health Equity. This is actually a physical location in which now she is attacking the problem that she started out with, that inequity between health access. So now she has a physical center in which it is staffed up. She now gets funding from the government. She's getting grants from organizations. She has sponsors from corporations. How about marketing? You go type Ayla Stanford and see what happens. Man, your computer is going to explode. She's been on CNN, CBS, CNBC, in the morning on the Today Show, like just because she just stepped out and took the opportunity, the problem, and turned it into an opportunity. So again, this is just a great example, I think, of a Philadelphia local hero, Shiro, because again, we want you to think local. What is an issue here in Philadelphia? And I found out through doing this, Alan, I didn't know this, that Philadelphia actually had the lowest or the highest vaccination rate for big cities in the United States amongst African Americans because of the work of the Black Doctors Consortium. So how about that?
Yeah, great.
So here's my final message. You can do good, but you can still do well, which means you can actually make money by making an impact. So I want you to think about, the viability of your business idea. Is it possible to actually be profitable? So these are ways that I want you to think about the monetizing your idea. Quick exercise is, who does your business idea serve? So we want to know your customer. So do you know exactly who that customer is? And so what I mean by that is be very, very specific. And so, of course, we have lots of resources in the Temple Library, which we ask that you kind of use that because you have access to it. But if you choose, you can also go to the Business Resource Information Center, the free library. They have a tool there that helps you like GPS based off of where your target customers are. What are some of the demographics around those customers? The more informed you are in the delivery of your pitch, the higher the judges are going to rate you. So think about who is your customer, right? So in marketing, KYC, know your customer, is the number one thing that they use in marketing. And then what are the sources of your revenue? So, okay, so this is where financial sustainability takes place. And so we want you to be sustainable, right? So if you know where you could actually generate revenue, is it from the customer? Are there government programs? Or in fact, is there a reimbursement model that you could use that will help you be able to do something that Rebecca and I spoke about, which is scale your business. Scale means start small, be big, right? So think big, start small, and grow big. And in order to do that, what you want to do is have a handle on what is the financial health of your company. And so that's where accounting comes into play. And so I want to turn it over to Rebecca. But before I do, I want to make sure I answer any questions anybody has about, being financially sustainable. Come on, somebody's got a question, a thought. All right, give me a thought and then I'll leave you alone. Somebody give me a thought. And it can't be you, Alan.
If I had you as my teacher in accounting, I probably wouldn't have done as poorly as I did when I was studying undergrad. So
I don't know about that, Rebecca. So students like me, but they don't like the work. That's for sure. Going once, going twice. Come on, ask an accounting question. Someone give me a thought about, as you're thinking about your revenue, what are some of your thoughts about nonprofit versus for-profit? Does anybody have an idea or a thought they'd like to ask? All right, Alan, I tried to get them off the wall.
Well, Wayne, thank you. Tell your students you're late because of me, but great job. So thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. So I got one from, it looks like Reverend Williams. So Innovation Accounting by Dave Benetti. No, but that's a great resource, Rex. So looks like there is Innovation Accounting as a way of thinking about how to go about doing the accounting for your business. So thank you for sharing, Rex. All right, I'm going to turn it over to the more than capable hands of Rebecca. Rebecca, I'm sorry I can't be here to see your delivery, but I love the slide deck, so I'll miss it, but I'll catch the recording.
All right. Thanks so much, Wayne.
Thank you, everyone. Good luck.
Just before Rebecca starts, one comment I just want to add to Wayne's about resources. We also have over 200 mentors available to help you. And yeah, I don't know if any of you are part of the Accelerator, the 1810 Accelerator. I'd urge you to be a part of it. You basically just need to scan a code or hit a link, fill out a couple questions, whether you're here, whether you're an alum, whatever, it's great. But whether you're a part of that or not, we have mentors available. And that's one of the really nice things about being part of the Changemaker Challenge process. So just so you know, the research resources Wayne mentioned are great, but we could also, depending on your area of focus, match you with mentors who have similar experience or goals. Okay, Rebecca.
Thanks so much. Yeah, so Wayne had such great insight. And I really want to build off of the themes that Wayne talked about and challenge everyone to think about innovation and sustainability beyond recycling, right? So I think that there is something that happens when you're thinking about doing good and you're thinking about the environment, and it really is, I hear a lot about recycling, and I think there's so much opportunity. So I really hope to share hopefully some tips, some tricks for you to consider not only environmental sustainability, but financial and social responsibility as well. So is this innovative? So imagine for a second that you are an investor and I am the entrepreneur. And I say to you, I have an innovative idea and my core business model is based on a concept, a theory that was formally introduced in 1990. So show of hands, if after I said my business model was based off of a concept that it's been around since the 90s, was one of your first thoughts, wow, something that old can't be innovative? Did anyone think that? How about, I'm intrigued, tell me more. Anyone? And maybe some of you thought, you know what, I wasn't even born then. So, which is totally fine. Now imagine, Wayne talked about like really knowing your business, really setting yourself apart. Imagine that I said to you, I have this innovative idea and my core business model will save money, turn a profit, it's financially viable. Additionally, my business model helps to ensure the survival of humans and the planet. A little more intriguing, perhaps. And what's interesting about those two things is that they're actually the same. So this concept, this business model is the definition of sustainability. And it was first coined, it was said in the 90s, and it really addressed this triple bottom line of sustainability. So planet, people, profit. And when you consider and you successfully integrate and address those three things, then you are truly sustainable. Right? So that's what we're striving. So it isn't just about environmental sustainability. It is about people and it is about financial sustainability. With everything in life, we really have, rebranded, rethought for time. So if you haven't heard about the 3 pillars of sustainability in business, you may have heard about ESG. So environmental, social, and governance. And this is has gained a lot of popularity in both the for-profit sector and the nonprofit sector, more so in the for-profit sector. And this is sustainability at its core. It's the same thing, it's just talked about a little bit differently. So I want to go through each of the pillars and think to, or, you know, speak to you a little bit about like, what is innovative? What are the considerations that you need to make? What are the questions you need to answer, ask yourself in order to really dig down, drill down into sustainability and innovation? So environmental innovation, you know, thinking about things that climate, water, energy, carbon, environmental management. Those are the, you know, the heavy hitters. So one of the things that I will say is that in the kind of scope of environmental sustainability, you have a lot of people that are solving for the symptom and not the cause. And I think where we need to get to as businesses, as humans, is really to not only innovate to solve for this symptom, but also try to identify solutions and innovations for cause. And I'll go more into what I mean by that in later slides. But regardless, whether you're trying to innovate for your symptom or for your cause, you really need to focus on 4 major steps, which are, you got to research, right? So a lot of the times when people are talking about environmental sustainability, you know, solutions may exist, but they're not really researching and drilling down to say, okay, will this work for me, for my product or the service that I'm developing? So researching is really important. Define and validate the problem. Design and develop solutions, test and iterate. Really important. So what do I mean? Okay, so in this example of fashion, textile waste is an issue. Okay. Does anybody want to unmute yourself and wager a guess? Is this a symptom or a cause of fashion? Negative. All right, I'll just give you the answer. It's a symptom, right? So a symptom of the fashion industry is that textile waste is a very, very big issue in fashion. Okay, so in this example, you are innovating to fix or to address a symptom of the fashion industry. And the solution that you have developed for your company, your fashion line, is that you're going to take back and you're going to recycle all of your product. All right, so if that is in fact one of the things that you're integrating into your business model, you have to be able to answer all of the questions on the right-hand side of the slide, which is, where are you going to store the material? How will the clothing be transported and recycled? Will you have to pay disposal of it for recycling? And is it being recycled or just shipped someplace else, shipped away, stored somewhere? Because if you really dive down into the research, you will discover that it's really hard to do this. It's really hard to have material, take it back, and actually recycle it. And there are a lot of other costs that may not be so obvious to you. So, you know, if you are thinking about this concept or a concept like this, you really have to be prepared on how are you going to handle the material? How are you going to move the material? How are you going to pay for the material? All of these things to be aware of. So in this example, while you are still developing a solution for a symptom, it is more innovative. So let's just say, okay, textile waste is an issue. Okay, recycling it is really hard. I'm doing more research, and I figure out that one of the reasons that it's so challenging is because there's not a good way to mechanically separate textiles, right? So you have cotton and polyester, you need to separate those to recycle it. So a more innovative solution to address a symptom would be if you could engineer a way to actually mechanically separate those materials, right? And in your research, you discover everybody's trying to figure this out. So in addressing the questions on the right-hand side, is there a demand for this technology? Absolutely, there's a demand. Like, this would be a moneymaker, 100%, if you could actually develop this technology. But then it's like, okay, if I can do it, can I scale it? Like Wayne was talking about, right? Maybe you're starting off small. Maybe you're partnering with, a fashion line. You're not actually developing a product, but you're just developing a technology. But, where are you locating that, the physical plant, and who's running the machinery? All of these things you have to answer. So, an example of an innovation for a cause, the symptom is textiles waste is an issue. But if you really drill into that and you think about, okay, so that is a symptom of a fashion industry. Why? Why is that happening? And in your research, you may discover that it wasn't always an issue, right? When, in the 50s and 60s, designers were designing 2 collections per year. It was like spring, summer, and fall, winter, right? Now you are in fast fashion, you're having a collection a week, right? So there's just, the volume is so much more. So innovating, which is not, new, right? As Wayne said, like, it's not a new idea, but how you're talking about it is, okay, I'm going to develop this fashion line. I'm thinking about the environment. I'm going to develop a high quality item, and my line is going to be seasonless. So it's going to be mix and match. The price point is going to be higher. I'm going to pay fair wages, and I'm going to figure out a way where I feel like I compete in this marketplace. So this is an innovative solution that addresses the cause and not the symptom, right? So fashion, recycling, 2 things people love to talk about, love to pitch ideas about, and this is kind of a breakdown, and hopefully a new way that you can think about this and be inspired for thinking about it in a different way and addressing environmental sustainability. I'm going to stop and answer any questions. Alan, I'm assuming you're monitoring the chat.
Yes, no questions yet.
Okay. All right. Well, if no questions about environmental sustainability, we're going to move to social sustainability. All right. So I think one of the biggest challenges of addressing social sustainability is really defining the boundary, right? When you zoom out, when you're thinking about your product or your service, your technology, when you go down that rabbit hole of who's it's affecting, where is your impact happening from an environmental standpoint, from a social standpoint, it can get really big and really overwhelming. And the way that I like to define the boundary, or the way that I like to think about it, is when you're thinking about your product or your service and you're thinking about societal impact, you want to think about it in two big buckets. You want to think about how is it affecting people internal to your business, and then the individuals external to your business. So that's like the big S, like the big society. Okay. And when you're thinking about internal, you're thinking about, you know, your people. How much are you paying them? What kind of benefits are you giving them? Vacation and the working conditions. When you're thinking about external, you're also thinking about salary and working conditions. You know, in the example of the fashion industry, a lot of the times, you know, the designer does not own the manufacturing plant where their goods are being made, right? They're outsourcing that, but that still matters. That's still tied to you. And that is something that you need to consider. Are they paying, you know, whoever you're outsourcing that to, are they paying a fair wage? Are the working conditions good and equitable? What is the impact to your local community? Can you site your headquarters in a location that's, you know, maybe is seeing kind of a downturn in job or industry? What kind of pollution is this generating? Tech, that's a huge one, right? So even though you are not creating, let's say, pollution from your app, you're depending a lot on servers. Servers take a lot of energy, and that energy has to be produced. Where is it being produced? You know, is that affecting communities? Because your product is so energy intensive. Gentrification, are you making an investment that's good, but then, you know, there's some challenges with that. And then the big question is, you know, is your product or service providing a benefit to society? And even better innovation is if it's not already being met, right? It's providing a benefit that isn't already happening. It's not in existence. So one of a local example of this is the development of the old PES refinery in South Philly. So if you were in Philly a couple of years ago, you may have been woken up by this huge explosion or heard about it. Or if you were in space, you would have seen it because it was literally that big. Satellites saw this explosion from this refinery. It had been around for, you know, 100 of years. The communities surrounding this refinery had a lot of concerns, were impacted from health-wise, just a lot of issues with how this facility was being run. So when the company that owned it went bankrupt after this big explosion, the city of Philadelphia was entertaining different proposals. And the winning bid was a company that was going to use it not to refine, but use it as a transportation hub. And in their proposal, really hit upon the needs of the neighborhood. They did a lot of research, listening sessions, they put together a proposal that was responsive to what the surrounding community wanted. And, you know, I think that was an innovative, that was an innovation. It wasn't their core business plan, but through that, they were able to address a societal need and benefit and make a really strong case for their reimagining of this space. So the last thing is the governance. So, you know, Wayne talked a lot about the finance side. I'm not going to go into it in great detail, but it really is about financial sustainability, and also, you know, how are you running your company or your nonprofit? So how are you making decisions? How your board of directors established? Is there diversity? How are people compensated? How it manages risks? All of those things, when you're developing a business, you really need to think about and be prepared to answer, right? And as Wayne said, if you don't have the expertise, there's resources available. You want to build your team out to really make sure that you are answering these questions. You can be responsive. And you have good governance over your business or nonprofit business. So I want to provide a list of resources as well, add to the list that Alan talks about and Wayne talks about. So the first thing is the Office of Sustainability is definitely a resource for you. We are available to run your business by, if you're thinking about incorporating sustainability, environmental justice, environmental sustainability, financial sustainability. We can help you kind of work through questions and figure out how to answer them. The other thing is that Philadelphia has a lot of really great resources for businesses that are considering sustainability. So Sustainable Business Network, or Urban League of Philadelphia, and also, certified B Corporation. So even if you don't go for your B Corp certification, you can use the checklist as a way to think about, uncover things that maybe you are not aware of, or think through processes. So even if you don't go for certification, it's a really good way to just view your business, your service through a different lens. So that's all that I have for everyone. Do you have any questions? Oh, Alan, you're muted.
Yeah. Questions for Rebecca. She's a great resource. She didn't mention that previous to us, she worked for SEPTA. No, she's not the reason that your train is late.
I'm not.
I know. And several other resources. So she has a breadth of experience in private business and government and pseudo government, and obviously here on campus. No questions. This is such a quiet crowd today.
Oh, Susie raised her hand.
Oh yeah. Go on, Susie.
Hi, I just wanted to know if you had tips for kind of making the most, I guess this is more general because Alan, I know you're talking about the mentorship meetings as well. I think often when I see those kinds of resources, like I'm afraid of wasting the office's time. I don't necessarily know exactly how to make the best use of the time. So I'm just wondering if you have any tips on kind of using those resources and, maybe things to know in that regard.
Rebecca, you want to handle that?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely do not feel like you're wasting anyone's time, because I think I love hearing about ideas and innovations. I think, what's most helpful for you would be if you have something that you're thinking about, and then we can kind of talk about, hey, did you think of this? Or were you aware that this resource was available for you? Or you should talk to this person. So I think in that way, definitely have an idea, have things that you're considering, but you don't have to be 100% committed to any one idea, even if it is just like a brainstorming session. I think can be really helpful in development. And we love to work through things like that.
Yeah, and I'll reinforce what Rebecca said. The worst thing for people like Rebecca and I and Wayne is if people have ideas and they could benefit from talking to someone and they don't. And do not worry. Again, at this stage, we're not looking for ideas that you could prove are valid. We're just looking for ideas or ideas about ideas that you think makes sense and just that you've thought about. So I would say, don't go to a mentor if you haven't done a Google search to see if your idea is offered by 150 people. But if you're really at a nascent stage and just saying, boy, I'd like to do something, I don't know, pick a topic. For trash collection here in Northeast Philly, which is a major, major issue, go talk. We'll set you up with, I mean, Rebecca will do it. I'll do it. We have a lot of mentors. Just go talk about the issue and some thoughts for maybe how you would like to suggest handling it or improving the way it's handled. The only complaint I ever hear from mentors is if people haven't done the most basic preparation, which is thought about the idea, a little bit about who it was for, how it would work, and then being sure it's not offered all over the place. If you do those, mentors love to speak to you and see your energy and your ideas, and they like to feel engaged. These are people who like to give back also.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Yep. Anyone else? Okay, so I think I'm going to share my screen, I hope, and just wrap up. Oh, sorry, I'm a little behind here, or I'm a lot behind. So a couple things. What Wayne and what Rebecca presented are great, and all this will be available, and the YouTube should be available, I think, by Thursday. We're not looking for you to be able to go through everything Wayne and Rebecca communicated now. But what we would like to do is sort of just have you have that in your mind for down the road. But now, just think of the ideas, and as Rebecca and Wayne both stressed, are they different from what's offered out there? Is there a real need? Who has the need? And, our ideas that have won in the past range for something for a couple blocks in Northeast Philadelphia or a community to stuff that is national in scope. And one does not get viewed more than the other. And I always say, and I have to figure out who made the statement, but somewhere someone very wise said, if you make one person smile, you make the world smile. If you can help 5 families or a block of families get 3 nutritious meals a day, when right now maybe they have 1, you've made a difference. And you could almost view that as your pilot, because if you enter the Changemaker Challenge or whatever, and you go and you try it based on help you get from mentors or maybe some funding, and it works, well, why not then scale it up, as Wayne and Rebecca talked about, to blocks, to portions of the city, etc. And, that's how things like Phil Abundance and others got started. So, again, I think Rebecca or Wayne are absolutely fantastic, and they both have a world of wisdom. These are the events. Hopefully, we will see you on the 30th, just so you know, because it is break for those who are students. Around November 23rd, you'll get an email just with some tips about thinking about social ideas and entering the Changemaker Challenge. Again, please scan just to get resources. You don't have to register or pre-register for the Changemaker Challenge, but if you're here, it means you give a darn. I think I'm allowed to say that, right? Darn, I'm allowed. So tap into these free resources. They're great.